So welcome everyone. My name is Connor. I welcome all pronouns, and I'm one of our co-coordinators here at Farm School. And why don't we go around with all of our facilitators and we can all introduce ourselves just with names, pronouns, and roles for the evening.
Peace, y'all. I can go next. Peace, I'm Francis. I use she, their pronouns. I am a Farm School graduate of 2018 and the other program co-coordinator alongside Connor. I'm really happy to see y'all tonight. Thank you for doing all that you had to do and not do to be here this evening.
Hi everyone, my name is Claudia or Claudia. I am project manager with Farm School NYC, and I'm happy to be here. This is my first info session, even though I've known about Farm School for many, many, many years and have attended classes. My first info session.
Hello everyone, my name is Jazz. I welcome all the pronouns and I am the communications person for Farm School. And I am very excited to be here with you all.
Hello everyone, blessings. My name is Onika. I use she, her pronouns. It's so good to see you here. I love info sessions. I'm director of Farm School.
Thank you all. We look forward to getting to know you all later this evening too. Our plan is to begin with some slides and share about the citywide program and just share some information. And then after our slides, everyone's invited to stick around and we'll break out into breakout rooms and just kind of reflect and generate some questions and then come back for some Q&A and welcome any and all questions that you all have for this evening. So everyone is invited to continue to do whatever you need to do while you're here on the Zoom, whether you want to be on camera or off camera. Feel free to type questions into the chat as we move through too, and any questions that we don't get to while we're presenting, we'll definitely come back to for Q&A at the end as well. And yeah, like we said, just really happy that everyone is here this evening for our first info session and launch of our applications for this year's citywide certificate program. We have been offering this programming since Farm School started with our mission and history, which we'll get to in a little bit. Francis, if you want to take us to the next slide.
Yes, thank you, Connor. So Farm School was founded, it really began very organically from a group of farmers, urban farmers, gardeners, folks who were working in low-income communities across the city, particularly around food sovereignty, and a lot of Black and brown women primarily were really thinking about what assets we have here in these communities that we're working in to build from. And there was a wealth of knowledge about how to grow sustainably, organically, in our urban communities, and they wanted to be able to share that knowledge. And they came up with this concept of a training program for adults that was really centering food justice and doing a lot of actual building and farming on farms and gardens across the city. And that's how Farm School was formed. In 2010, we started to hold the first classes for Farm School and developed this mission, which is really to train New York City residents, again, all grown-ups, in urban agriculture in order to build self-reliant communities and inspire positive local action around food access, social, economic, and racial justice issues. Some of the things that set Farm School apart have to do with who's teaching our classes. So primarily they're people who are practitioners, folks that are running farms and gardens around the city and sometimes outside of the city, and really using this social justice lens, using a liberatory lens. How do we use these tools that the earth has given us to create true sovereignty for our people? And so, we really do that through engaging site-based education. We'll talk a little bit more about what site-based means to us in the age of COVID and how we've been handling that. And we're really, our goal here is to cultivate the future leaders of this movement and our city and beyond. We believe, and we're about to get into the next slide, which you can go to, Francis, thank you. We really believe that a key part of our mission, and to really make our mission come to fruition, we need people who are going to train others, who are going to spread the knowledge that they learn in farm school as widely as possible. And so in order to get at that, we have a learning methodology that centers popular education. Some folks might be familiar. I feel like if this was a workshop, I would say, who's heard of popular education, and have you heard of training and traders, and what has been your interaction with that? I trust that some of you on this call are very intimate with what this model is. It comes out of labor organizing. It comes out of a lot of Central American and South American organizers. That really I think that the key part of this is that everyone is an expert, everyone has expertise. This really dismantling this hierarchy of knowledge is an important part of farm school. When you come into our classes, you come with your full self, your full experience, and we're like, it's counting on you to bring that into the space and create a place for sharing knowledge together. We look at our school as very experiential. We try our best to have hands-on education on farms. You're laying drip tape, you're creating raised beds. These are things that we're really want you actively to be doing together. We really try our best also to build in reflection as part of the work that we do together, as a way to really drill down and incorporate and embody some of what we're learning together. So we try to create spaces for that, and Francis and Connor do that explicitly within the classes that they're coordinating for us. In terms of being learner-centered, we really are trying to center not what we want you to know, but think about what you want to be doing with this knowledge and coming out of the space with this knowledge. And I love this, planning for uncertainty. This is a new bullet, I think, on this slide from when we've done it in the past. And Lord knows we need it right now. Really, we're operating in a space right now as people in farm school and as individuals on this planet where there's a lot of uncertainty. So that amount of flexibility is so important in the work that we do together. And as I said, we'll talk a little bit more about the combination of in-person and digital learning as we're going into some of the courses. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to, I think, Connor.
Thanks, Onika. Francis, can we go back? Is there one more slide? Thanks. So this is just a very general overview of what is in the citywide program. We would begin with a new student orientation on Saturday, November 20th. And then the core of the citywide program are a series of courses that flow throughout the growing season, which we'll get into in a moment. And we've also begun to have seasonal student meetings. So once every 3 months throughout the year, where students from different cohorts are invited to come back and meet our next cohort of students and really kind of do some inter-cohort learning between each other and just check in with each other of what's working, what isn't working, and how can we continue to iterate to improve the program in real time. So looking at our courses, there are 12 courses that we have offered as part of the citywide program, which are listed here in the order that they generally tend to happen throughout the year. And we'll get into each of these in a little bit. The citywide program is offered on Wednesday evenings and on Saturdays. So it's a 2-day per week, or there are 2 days per week for this commitment. We certainly don't have class every single week of the year. But it is Wednesday evenings and Saturdays. The Saturdays have ranged in hours before. And so these hours are approximate depending upon whether it's virtual or in-person learning, which we can share a bit about too. We have been continuing to do Wednesday evenings on Zoom and keeping those mostly digital, which is a little bit easier for folks, I think, for weekday evenings. And then on Saturdays, we have been meeting in person, where Francis has been coordinating those site visits to different urban farms and gardens, rooftop sites, really a selection of different places around New York City, and sometimes outside of New York City as well. We take a couple of trips per year to really understand and get to know a breadth of sites. So the first courses after new student orientation that are really our foundational grounding in the program are training of trainers, food justice, and botany. And as Onika is beginning to share, training of trainers is really rooted in popular education, which comes from labor organizing in South America. And it's a very transparent and forward way of understanding how we approach learning and recognizing that everyone's experience is valid and we are all both students and teachers, and how are we being just transparent in some of the dynamics that come up in educational settings. And it's also a really fun group activities and just ways of getting to know each other as we continue to build the strength of the cohort and folks kind of creating community agreements together and getting to begin to learn together. Our food justice course is led by farmer Yannette Fleming with Hattie Carthen Community Food Projects, located in Bedford-Stuyvesant, New York. And she has been part of Farm School since the beginning. She's one of the co-founders and has just been a really impactful and transformational teacher for everyone that comes through Farm School. So that is one of our most important courses that we make an intention to continue that lens of food justice throughout all of our courses and programming at Farm School. And so we've continued to think about how that might look in the future, whether that's one specific course or whether that will also be sprinkled throughout formally or more informally throughout the program. But we are always bringing this critical lens of understanding food and racial justice into all of our programming. Botany may seem a little more straightforward, and it's our spin on botany. So we really look at the relationship between people and plants throughout time. We definitely do go into some of the more technical terms of learning Latin binomial names and understanding that through a critical food justice lens of that history. So each of the courses will continue to have that component and that understanding as we move throughout the year. Moving with that flow of the growing season, in the spring we start to talk about propagation, as folks are generally sowing their seeds on farms, and learn about everything that you need to know for different types of propagating plants. We talk about soils and what makes good soil health and compost throughout the year as well. And once it's warm enough to start being outside and building things, we partner with sites to actually build projects, whether it's raised beds or trellises or some sort of structure to help support the growing at a specific site. I think moving into our summer courses, I will pass it back to Francis.
Thanks, Connor. So for summer, we live in a place which used to be called NYC as an ecosystem. This class is really dope. We get to kind of take in New York City, take in this land beyond what we see in front of us, right? So understanding the plants that are here, understanding the different ecosystems that are here, understanding people's history, who was here before, what impacted why the city is the way it is today. When we're in a garden, how do we investigate what was on this exact piece of land, on this plot of land prior to it being a garden? Who was here, who was forgotten, who needs healing, what plants like to grow in this soil. We get just a full view of the land and the ecosystems that are here in New York. And it's cool because it supports us. This class is informative in terms of you can take this work anywhere. So the point is, yes, we're studying New York City, but how do we take this information and make sure that we're doing right by all of the land projects that we take on? Irrigation, water systems, right? So in this class, we learn about the different ways to water our crops. We learn about how sacred water is and how we can basically work with water. I don't want to use the word sustainable, but for the sake of time, I'll say how to work with water sustainably in our land projects. So here we have some students in the North Bronx putting in a drip irrigation system for a community garden. And then crop management is cool because you get to build off of a lot of what's already been taught. So a lot of what's happening in carpentry and soils and irrigation and propagation. And we start to think about, a little more closely about those crop families. What do the different crop families like? What are the exact conditions that the plants are going to need to flourish? And for autumn, we have preparing for winter, right? So now it's getting a little colder, we're further along in the season, and we're thinking, what happens now that the temperature is dropping, now that it might begin to snow? How do we prepare our space to survive the winter or to flourish in the winter, right? Here in this photo, we have a low tunnel. So how do we seed save for next season? How do we plant some hardy greens throughout the winter that'll actually survive the winter? Small farm planning and design. We get to think about our dream land projects, taking in everything into consideration, right? This is the second to last class. So how do we take all of this information and really start to think about creating something or supporting another project that already exists? So in this class, sometimes you're literally designing a farm project. Sometimes you're thinking about crop planning, you're thinking about where you're going to get funding from, things like that in small farm planning and design. And then for seasons close, this is the end. So now we're thinking, how do we take this information and move forward? How do we continue thinking about what we learned in training of trainers, and how are we going to pass this information along? How are we going to be essentially the strongest, illest food justice, food sovereignty warrior, steward, right, in our work? We get to do a lot of reflection and planning for the future in the last course. So I'll pass it back to Onika.
So moving into where we actually do this work, where do we actually go? Who is talking at the classes? We have so many beautiful guest speakers and practitioners come. Those are the partners that we turn to. So you'll see here a list, and it's not all inclusive either. I think that we're always adding to this list in terms of places where we go and actually do our classes. There's also an element of places where we might volunteer and do some mentorship kind of connections in the past. But you'll see that there are a range of firms here. So Bronx Green Up is actually affiliated with the New York Botanic Gardens in the Bronx, and does all the community outreach and all these different farms and gardens. So traditionally, folks from Bronx Green Up have helped us with our Preparing for Winter course. We spent a lot of time at like Taqua Community Garden, a community farm, which is also listed here, and was often a place where we would do a lot of that work and tree pruning in the fall. I remember doing a lot at Taqua. A place like Red Hook Farm, which is located in Red Hook in Brooklyn, has a range of different activities that we've done there in the past, and also have pulled from their staff to be trainers for us. And then there are places that are outside of New York City that are listed here as well. So for example, there is Rocksteady Farm in Millerton, New York, and Rise and Root Farm in Chester. So Rocksteady Farm is just like, there's so many connections with farm school at that farm. One of our graduates is one of the cooperative members on that farm. One of our beloved founders and teachers is also one of the owners there. And then I can't even, there's almost all of them have some kind of connection to farm school. And that is really beautiful for us. I think one of the things that we're trying to build here are these connections. So we love the fact that by coming through farm school, you're able to really learn different scales of farming, different approaches to farming, different business entities and non-business entities affiliated with farming. So you can really get a sense of what might work for you in kind of making that dream come to fruition, whether that is a farm, a community garden, some affiliated food related type of work that is not either one of those things. And this is a wonderful way for you to start to form those relationships and mentorships through our programming. So I think Connor's up.
I'm up. So thank you for sharing about our partners, what you were just saying about getting to see, getting to know different facilitators and seeing how different projects are going. That was something that stood out to me about the program as a student. So partners, thinking of students now, where are they now? So this is a short list. Again, like there's so much more to add to this. I jumped in today and I quickly added coordinating community fridges, which I've seen a lot of students now working on, and some other things that stand out. Folks are, starting farms or joining farms. Folks are doing a lot of farm education, running edible landscaping companies, working at different gardens in the city, like Queens Botanical Gardens, Brooklyn Botanical Garden, running nonprofits around food, farming and nutrition, or being on the board of nonprofits and other organizations that are centered around this type of work, managing floral designs, taking on prestigious farm apprenticeships. The list is very long.
I think what we're moving into now is talking about tuition. So traditionally, farm school, we've always been very centered on really centering low-income communities of color and the students that we serve from the very beginning. And so that's looked like a couple of different things. For example, we have we've made sure that at least 50% of the students that are in farm school at any given time identified as low income, and we had a metric for identifying that, and always had a sliding scale tuition model because we really wanted to make sure that your income and ability to pay was not a barrier to joining this community. And through a lot of real beautiful generosity of spirit and of money by many members of our community, including students past who have stepped up and paid close to full tuition, who've stepped up and made other gifts, and others. We've been able to, for the first time this year, make tuition no longer in a debenture to farm school. So what we've moved into is what we call a gift economy, and what we look at as a gift economy. And by that we mean there are so many different ways that our community members and students being the core of that contribute to our community. Just them showing up in class on a regular basis and being present and sharing what knowledge they have is an incredible gift to each other. And is immeasurable. And there are various other ways that folks show up for each other, like sharing food and carpooling and you name it. There's just a wonderful things that we recognize are critical for the running of our school. And so we wanted to step back from requiring finances as the only way, or trying to lift it up as the only way that people contribute. It's not. So what that basically means is, as of August 1st of this year, we no longer, anyone who had outstanding tuition with farm school that was no longer a debt that they needed to pay to farm school. And at this point, every single penny that someone decides to give to farm school who is with us as a student is considered a gift, because it is. And there's no expectation that you need to give a financial gift to farm school to be a part of our community and to be in classes with us. I'm not sure how to make that more clear. I feel like I get so caught up in the spirit of what we're trying to create here and sometimes don't drill down enough into the actuality. So I'm just going to say again, that means we will not bill tuition going forward. We'll never ask you, to make a tuition payment. We recognize that it does cost money to run this program, and we do fundraise to cover those costs. And you will receive in our newsletter some requests for funds to make a donation, but it is always by choice, and there's never an expectation, and we're not going to be tracking that you give something. Okay, I'm sure there'll be questions about that, but I'm going to leave it there for now and move on to the next slide.
Thanks, Onika. So here's our timeline, y'all, for the rest of the year. As you know, applications opened August 6th. Here we are, August 2nd. Here we are on the 12th for our first info session. This is being recorded and will be on our website. And then we'll have an additional info session September 13th. Applications will close September 26th. So you have over a month, right, to complete the application if you're interested in joining the program. Interviews will happen mid-October, and towards the end of October, on the 29th is when we will notify folks of their acceptance. First week of November on the 5th, we will have the confirmation of acceptance from those who are interested in moving forward. The registration form will also be due on that day, November 5th. As Connor mentioned, November 20th is our new student orientation, and classes begin. So training of trainers begins December 1st.
Francis, while we're here, I just wanted to hop in for a moment and share like the timeline of the program as well. So in the past, this program has been offered maybe as a 2-year program. Last year, it was a shorter program. And so just being clear with everyone that courses would go from December 2021 this year until December 2022. So it's a 1-year commitment that folks are making for being a part of this program.
Thanks, Connor. And for our last slide, how to apply. So our application is on our website. And for any questions, aside from the ones that we'll go through today, as you're processing, as you're working through the application, as questions continue to come up, you can send those to info@farmschoolnyc.org. So everything's on our website, farmschoolnyc.org. So that was a lot of information. Thank you for still being here. I just stopped screen and I still see you all's faces. So shout out to you and us. We are going to transition now into a couple of breakout groups. There'll be about 4 to 6 people per group, really just to continue processing, to share questions that have come up. A lot of times folks have the same questions. A lot of times y'all can answer some of those questions as well. So we wanted to just spend some time in those breakouts and have you all spend time in the breakouts and generate some questions, share some information, and then we'll come back and continue. We'll do like a large group Q&A portion before closing out. That sounds good. So we have Claudia setting up our breakouts. How's it looking?
Just setting them up now. There'll be about 4 or 5 of you to a room.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
While we're setting that up, Valerie, I can just say yes. In previous years, the citywide certificate was a 2-year program, and we've decided to focus on this first year of courses that we shared about and still offer kind of an iteration of an apprenticeship and of some other programming in a different format, in a different iteration this next year. So those things aren't going away, but they'll just be accessible kind of in a different form.
All right, I'm going to open the rooms now.
Thank you. So we'll see you in a few minutes. We'll send a message to the groups for the Q&A portion.
Okay, I believe everybody is back now.
Welcome
back. I hope that you all had a great breakout room. We're transitioning now into the Q&A section, so we hope that your groups had enough time to introduce one another, come up with common themes and questions, and then you can feel free to unmute yourself and we will begin our Q&A section. Also, if you're not able to unmute, you can feel free to put it in the chat and I will be sure to read it out for us. No question will go unanswered today.
If I have a question, do I just speak or? So in my group, what's not and we were wondering what is like the vetting process. so like some of us have applied already, and there's a month between this orientation and the next. Is there anything that you have to do specifically to kind of like get a shoe in, or are there certain things that you guys look for applicants?
So the question I'm hearing from you is, what is the vetting process and how do we ensure, how do we be a shoe-in? I'm also seeing in the chat, what is the in-person protocol? So we'll give Francis, Connor, and Onika some time to answer those and then keep sending them in the chat.
Sure. For our vetting process, we have a team from the farm school community that reviews all of the applications. So it's a combination of staff and teachers and old students. Anyone in farm school who has been through the year-long program is invited to be a part of that application review process. And then we read all of the applications with at least 2 folks reading applications, and then moving on to the interviews, which are all co-interviews. So at least 2 people from farm school co-interviewing everyone as well, in order to arrive to a group of usually somewhere between 25 to 30 people each year.
So if something comes to mind that I, forgot to include in my application, is it advantageous of me to reach out and say, hey, I've also, done this, or do I just like leave my application as it is and just hope for the best?
So we're thinking about supplementing information. Anyone who'd like to answer?
Maybe I can weigh in. We typically get upwards of 100 applications, so it's pretty difficult for us to evaluate supplemental information after the deadline, because very soon after that we send it out to our readers, and it gets a little hard. Truthfully, we have our applications open now, and we get like 75% of the applications come in the last day and a half, 2 days. Take your time. If you submit something early and then want to resubmit before the deadline, that is also okay. But after the deadline, we're going to really pass out whatever we have. And so there's not a lot of opportunity for supplemental information.
Can I ask something? I'm sorry. What is the number one ingredient for an application to merit acceptance?
Oh my God, this is so hard. I also don't want to forget the question on protocols, which maybe Connor or Francis wants to dive into.
Sure. I also kind of see there's a couple of other folks asking questions in the chat about like, what are we looking for in applicants? What makes a strong candidate? So I think that's a common question coming up. So I'm hearing that, and then like in-person meeting protocols. Francis, do you want to share a little bit about what we've been doing in person and what we might expect for next year too?
Yeah, in terms of in person, so right now, Wednesdays, are virtual. We're on Zoom with our facilitator. A little bit of lecture, a little bit of breakout groups, connecting with one another, right? Just trying to keep it as engaging as we can virtually, which is not easy. And Saturdays in winter are generally also virtual. And to the question about if every Saturday is in person, it's really hard to answer right now, dealing with this virus and all of its variants. So right now we are creeping back into in person. We have been meeting on Saturdays in person, in small groups with our masks on, just kind of going class by class and seeing like, does this still feel comfortable? Do we want to keep meeting in person, checking in with our facilitators, right? Making sure they're comfortable, wanting to do what feels right for them and our students. And as we go along, we're going to keep doing that, to be honest, keep checking in with folks and seeing what feels safe. And if things intensify and, the virus gets worse and things do not feel safe, we will go back to just virtual programming. So that's how classes are, right? So right now, Wednesdays are virtual, Saturdays are in person for the most part. Sometimes we've had, like right now we're in crop management. Our first Saturday was virtual, and then we're gonna have 2 in person. So there is need for a bit of flexibility for the program, just because that's the world, that's what we're going through, that's what we're living through right now. Hope that answers your Saturday question. And then I'll pass it back for like the ideal candidate, strong qualities question. Bounce it back to y'all.
Sure. Francis, I would also add to that just like COVID agreements being part of community agreements and just looking at that holistically, in addition to like Zoom agreements. I think folks learn differently on Zoom, oftentimes than in real life. So just really trying to create opportunities for dialogue and feedback amongst the cohort to see how, like, really what is working, what isn't working, so that we can be meeting everyone's needs as best as possible.
Oh, Jazz, were you about to move to a different question? Okay. I didn't want to not answer your question around what, we're paraphrasing it as what makes an ideal candidate. I don't think this would be asked exactly, but it's hard to say. I think that there are a couple of things that stand out, and I really say, like, take your time with the application, by which I mean not to write reams and reams and reams of an answer, but to be really thoughtful on it. When we receive so many applications, it's really easy for the things that are look like they took a little bit less time to do. It's easier to weed those out. So be thoughtful in that way. I think from my perspective, I have to first say that this is the most fun thing. Like, it's a lot of work, and it's also the most fun thing I do in farm school, is read applications, and just knowing that there are people out there in this world with the points of view and the passions and the interests that y'all have is so gratifying. Like, I'm like tearing up thinking about it, and thinking about Francis's like application way back in the day and how incredible that was. But I will say some things that stand out is like, why are you doing this? Like, why do you want to do this work is really important. Our mission is around food sovereignty and around food justice. So be really thoughtful about that. There are wonderful places where you can go and learn how to trellis tomatoes. Like, we have a whole resource that we can share around technical knowledge, which is a big part of what we do. But there are lots of other places where you can get that knowledge, and we have few seats available. So we're really looking for folks that in some way, shape, or form want to further our mission around positive change, around food justice, social, economic, racial justice issues. So I think those are the things I would emphasize. Connor has been through this process a lot and has written a lot, read so many applications. So I'm wondering if you have other thoughts to share.
I think you answered that really beautifully, and just saying, I think everyone deserves this, and that's part of our move towards like a gift economy offering. It's just trying to offer this to as many folks as possible. To be honest, I was answering some questions in the chat while you were talking for part of that. I think part of my perspective is, as corny as it may sound, just like someone who really is just being their self. And there is no like ideal candidate. Everyone is valid in their own way. I think a combination of things that feel important is maybe having some understanding of like a little understanding of what growing is like. Maybe that could be like you've grown something in your yard or on your fire escape, or been a part of a community garden, or have family history. Like, you come from a a line of farmers and kind of have that in your family, paired with some understanding of like food justice work and maybe whether that's lived experience or more theory, but just I think putting that combination of like criticality into practice growing food oftentimes feels compelling. But honestly, they're like, we need everyone in order to change everything. And so it really is right or wrong.
I'm ready.
Connor, thank you so much for your answers. I just wanted to highlight what was going on in the chat for folks. So there was a question regarding COVID precautions and guidelines, which Francis answered wonderfully in the chat, if you want to read that over. Another question was asked about recommendation letters, and Connor answered for us, no recommendation letters are needed. And then we had an interesting question from Zev asking to speak about how farm school has impacted lives from a student perspective. So I was thinking maybe Francis could answer this one.
Sounds great. Farm school showed me that there were so many other dope people who wanted to reimagine our community and people who wanted to essentially operate outside of white supremacy, capitalism, and all sorts of oppression. It was really dope to just be, you know, in all of these classes through the months, through the weeks, learning with people who were very clear that the world that we live in is not okay. At least most of what's going on is not okay, and that we are able to return to and recreate some really powerful things. So something else I really enjoyed was meeting the different facilitators. It was cool to just get to see people actually doing the work, and everyone in this field needs extra hands with whatever project they're working on. So it's always been cool to meet facilitators that you like genuinely connect with and then be able to support their work and continue learning about different aspects of food justice and food sovereignty and stewarding the land. And it was, I don't come from a family of growers, at least not like, these most recent generations. So it was just cool to learn about things that I had no idea about. Like when I took the soils class, Onika was one of the facilitators, and I was just like, damn, I could just stop here and just go in on soil. I had never really thought about soil like that. And now I just want to talk about soil. So it's cool to learn about things that you just maybe have no idea about. So that's my short answer for now. It's the community piece. I think the community piece is the largest thing. You could, like Onika said, you could learn how to trellis tomatoes from anybody, anywhere. But the people who come into this program and the food, the justice, the food justice, social justice framework is what makes it a special place. We're not just doing it for fun. There is a lot of fun, right? But it's a little deeper than that.
Yes, I think that we can see so many people are excited to be a part of the community in the question. So that was a wonderful answer. I also see more questions about tuition. And so I'm going to pass that back to Onika.
Sure. So I'm going to be more succinct this time. And I also, please come off mute for particular questions, because there is no tuition for farm school. This program that's coming up right now, you will never have to pay for it. We will never invoice you. If you are accepted to the program for the year, we will not require any monetary payment for coming to class. You just come. It is our job to raise the funds to pay all of the teachers, to pay ourselves. Like that is something that we are doing. That we believe that this course, the work that we're doing together, is a gift to you, and we're recognizing the gifts that you are making to our community and to this earth by doing this work. And so there will soon be on our website, we really just announced this change to our current students. They'll soon be on our website a bit more of an expansive definition around what we mean by gift economy. It comes out of a lot of really rich traditions of indigenous cultures that really lean into this idea of things being a gift and a gift building a culture an expectation of reciprocity in some way. And so by that, I mean, in this context, the reciprocity is spread this, right? Like do this work. Like that is the payment that we're hoping for in exchange for you being in the community with us, to just do it. And it's on us to raise the funds to make sure that our teachers are well compensated. That is a big part, that our staff are well compensated. Like that is on us to figure out. And it's on you, hopefully, to come and bring yourself and your knowledge to the space with us. So that is like the most, I hope it's the most simple I can make it. And there still might be questions. So please feel free to come off of mute and ask for more clarifications. I'm happy to do so. And also other staff might be able to speak to it as well more succinctly.
I have a kind of follow-up question to that. I'm wondering, I guess two things. Do you plan to release, like, for people who do feel like they are able to pay, some type of sliding scale, like for like a framework of how we should think about what we should/could contribute? And if we do choose to just do that on our own, like, could we do that month to month, as like, depending on how much we're making that month? And that's like the first half. Second half is like, how can we contribute, in a gift economy way, like you said, like contributing food and things like that, but will there be kind of, apparent opportunities to do that, so that we are like giving as much whatever goods and services or things as we can?
Yes, since this is a new initiative, we're still working out some of the ways that we're going to incorporate this into student lives. And I think that this is also something that I can imagine are going to come up in student meetings and in student orientation, and just like creating ways and opportunities to give that are not necessarily monetary, for sure. And then in terms of the monetary gifts, yes, I mean, we do have a framework already that I think that we want to revisit, that our sliding scale is based on. And we'll still be asking questions around your household income, because it's also important for our like grant reporting. And then we can, suggest or maybe, lift up some of that. So we're still figuring that out. Certainly there will always be an opportunity. And if I personally am doing my job, it'll be apparent to you of like how you can give, right? So there's a donation page on our website. We'll be including that in the newsletter. There's definitely a monthly giving donation where people can set that up and change that month to month, however that feels right. So I think as we're moving in and like iterating this with this next group of students, all of that will start to be more apparent, and we'll be taking like suggestions and ideas from y'all as well. But it is, what we wanted to take out of this equation is the sense of, one, that money is the only way that you contribute. That's such a capitalist concept, and it's so ingrained in how we operate, right? So that is not the only way you give. We want to recognize that that's not. And two, to just allow it to be much more flexible for folks, and not make it a requirement. So yes, thank you for that, Sydney.
Thank you. That's helpful.
I see you have a question. You wanna go ahead and ask?
Yeah. Is that me?
Oh, maybe Albert and Joanna. I see two folks.
Albert, you can go first. I've already asked the question.
Okay, yeah. So on that topic of the gift economy, I'm very interested in the school and the work that you guys do. So if for some of us that don't go through or don't make it past the application process or like make it to the interview process, are there opportunities to like volunteer and or give, assist in any way in return for like possibly some form of education, whether it be like small workshops or something like that, or just, are there ways to connect with you guys to kind of just collaborate and, I don't know, work something out that isn't full on 1 year school kind of thing?
Yes, so that is part of our decision for turning the Citywide into a 1-year program and looking at some of the offerings that we had offered in the second year, maybe making those of more of individual courses that would be open to a broader audience for folks who may not be in the certificate program, and having some more energy to divert more towards one-off courses, if you will. So we're still looking at what that might look like for 2022, but that's definitely something that we're thinking about as well. Also, just want to be conscious of time, that it's after 7. So if folks need to go, they're more than welcome to, and anyone who wants to stay on will definitely stay on for a little bit longer and answer more folks' questions.
I will have to go. It was great seeing everyone, and thank you for the opportunity here.
Thank you.
I will keep in touch and I hope I see you soon.
Thank you so much. Drive safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
One question that came up in the chat earlier was about previously we had required volunteer hours as being a part of the citywide program, and that I think also relates to the kind of the gift economy dynamic that we're creating moving into, is that part of those volunteer hours are like a gift back to the school, and there's many different ways of giving to the vitality of the program. So there are no volunteer hours that are required, and we hope that folks will feel inspired from the farm school community to continue to give back in whatever way feels accessible to them, if that is something that feels accessible to folks.
Oh, adding on to the volunteer hours, there was also a question about supplies, and now we just got one about final projects.
Well, I will say there's looked into the volunteer hours question about where in-person classes happen. So those happen all over the city. So there are different community gardens, different growing spaces that we'll have class in. And sometimes we'll go to farms upstate, like we mentioned Rise and Root Farm in Chester, New York. We mentioned Rocksteady Farm in Millerton, New York. We've gone to school gardens to have class. Back when we would have indoor classes, we would go, we had a class once like in an indoor aquaponics space. So wherever folks who, align with our work and mission are doing this type of work, we'll meet them there. And now we're, focusing on, we've always been outdoor, but now we're like only outdoor for the time being. And for supplies, no mandatory supplies, however whatever is needed to support you in taking in information. Sometimes, folks will have a tablet or handwriting notes. I would say like sun protection and rain gear. We are outside, rain or shine, if you have that. But in terms of like farm tools and things, we always have those things on site for the class. Whatever materials are needed for the class are provided by us and or the site. Do you want to add to that, Connor?
I'm not sure if you said like metro or transportation, but just like the cost of actually getting to places is a cost, and like food that you might eat during that time, or if you aren't able to make food, having to buy food. We recognize that there are many expenses like that folks are already contributing even just to be a part of the program too. But no specific like required supplies. Certainly like in thinking of technology, like whatever you need to do to be on Zoom or have that's certainly an expense too that we recognize exists.
And then I saw the question about transportation, if you wanted to speak on that before.
Right, so we try for the most part to find sites that are MTA accessible. But for the sites where you need to drive to, we usually do some kind of a car. In the past, we've usually done some kind of a carpooling situation. That's complicated by COVID for sure. Sometimes we've, provided shuttles from like a bus stop, or, a train stop at Metro North train stop or something like that when that's possible. But we usually figure out some kind of way to do a carpooling. And yeah, that is a lovely way that people definitely give back to the community, for sure. And oh my goodness, the potlucks have been legendary in the past. Did we answer Albert's question?
I believe we answered all questions. I think we might be missing one person.
So Albert, I have the same question as Albert. So you answered it. So thank you.
Oh yes. Is there still a final project?
Yeah, so each of the individual courses will often have some kind of either group project or individual self-directed project. So for example, if you're in the irrigation course, not only will there be like a irrigation install at a specific site that everyone would be working on, but oftentimes I think our teachers will say, like, if you have your own site, like design kind of your own irrigation plan so that you're able to apply what you're learning to whatever's going on in your life. So whether you're a part of a growing space or this might be a bit more theoretical. And then towards the end of the year, there isn't a full-on big project like seminar in the same way, but we definitely have plenty of opportunities for applied self-directed projects throughout the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was very informative.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for all the questions and just all the energy.
Yeah, seriously, thank you for all the time you guys have given us.
We can't wait to read your applications. Hope you all apply.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. You can always ask us questions at info@farmschoolnyc.org or the contact button on our website. We're happy to answer more questions. And you can come back to the second info session next month too.
So we have to